4 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting to order. I have a recommendation here that the agenda for the October 5th, 2021 Township of Wellington North Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee meeting be accepted and passed, and we'll do this as we always have. I will say that Deputy Milne, you moved that, and Dan, you seconded it, and all in favor. Thank you very much. I do not have any pecuniary interest. Councillor Yake.
None here.
Deputy Mayor Milne.
Nope.
Great, thank you. And with that, you'll see on page 1 the minutes of the previous meeting on September 7th, and they were approved by council on September 27th, 2021. I'll welcome you, Andy, as well. We're just getting underway, so I have no business arising from those minutes. Deputy Mayor Milne.
Do not. Nope. Thank you.
Councillor Yake.
Done.
All right, I have none. And seeing none, we'll move on to OPS 2021-034, being a report on the township's rec portfolio and its partnership with the Township of Southgate. If you'll bear with me, here we go. I have a recommendation moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive for information report OPS 2021-034, being a report on the township's rec portfolio and its partnership with the Township of Southgate. And further, that the committee recommend to the Council of Township of Wellington North that they direct the committee chair to appear as a deputation at a future council meeting of the Township of Southgate to request that Southgate Council consider a financial contribution to the new Mount Forest outdoor pool and aquatic facilities, as well as promote awareness of the public engagement process that will be a part of the conceptual design for the project. Seeing that, I will push this over to you, Matt Aston.
Yep. Thank you, Chair McCabe. This report really came about as a result of a question that was asked during the Rec Master Plan update at the last meeting. Really, the report that's before you is just a sort of a condensed version of the references to Southgate that are part of that 2018 master plan. Some of the highlights, I guess, that I just jotted down are that there's the discussion of the existing agreement with the Township of Southgate as it relates to the Mount Forest and District Sports Complex. There is discussion about Southgate's involvement with the Recreation Committee, and really the theme of, or a tone or a theme as part of that master plan of just cooperation with user groups, local municipalities, and other partners. And as part of the recommendation, there's a component of it that would see the Township of Wellington North approaching Southgate to see what their financial involvement could be or might be as it relates to the new outdoor pool in Mount Forest. And really the timing is right in that later on in this agenda, there's a recommendation towards hiring a design firm for the conceptual design of the Mount Forest Outdoor Pool and Aquatics Committee. So it would be a good time as far as making sure that Southgate would have involvement in that public consultation process, depending on how they see themselves fitting into the development of that amenity. So otherwise, certainly willing to take questions, but that's kind of a synopsis of the report, Chair McCabe.
Excuse me, thanks, Matt. Does anyone have any questions? I'll go to you, Brian. This is focused a little bit on Southgate, if you have any questions.
I'm not sure I have any real questions at the moment, other than to thank your CAO, because I think it's probably him that twigged onto my question in the last meeting that this arose from. So I guess it never hurts to ask, but I won't presuppose what the answer might be.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Yake?
No, nothing at this time.
All right, thank you. I guess I have one quick one, Matt, and I don't know if this might require delving into some history books. when the Lions Pool was built in Mount Forest, did like Croton or Egremont, and I guess what is now Southgate, you know, if they put any money towards it, or have they put any in the last 20 years since amalgamation? And I got a bit of a follow-up question for you after that.
Yep, thanks, Chair McCabe. And I guess in looking at some of that, so the existing pool was built in the 1950s and it was added on or upgraded in 1967. I'm not aware, and in asking township staff, no one's really brought forward whether or not there was contribution from some of the neighboring municipalities at that time. What has happened over the years is that Southgate as a township has paid the non-resident fee for members of Southgate who use the pool. And that for the period between 2015 and 2019, that has averaged about $1,000 a year that Southgate has picked up as it relates to non-resident fees. And I don't know if member Yake is aware of any contributions that maybe have been had, but I did ask around internally to staff, and we're not immediately aware of any related to the pool.
Thank you for that, Matt. And you actually answered my kind of follow-up question just with the regards to the rate that non-residents in Southgate pay, and if Southgate picked up that bill. So that's nice to see that as well. Councillor Ake, do you have any history or knowledge on that?
I don't know whether how it was funded at the time. I don't have whether neighboring municipalities contributed or not. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. I'll go to you, Matt, and then to you, Andy.
Yep, thanks, Chair McCabe. One thing that's worth noting, I guess, is with the move to Perfect Mind, the electronic booking solution, the township isn't able to easily have a non-resident fee associated with it, because within the software it's based on postal codes, and Mount Forest and Southgate share similar postal codes. So since this year, so in 2021, there was no non-resident fee charged, strictly as a result of the electronic solution that we're currently using for booking pools, just for committee's awareness.
All right, thank you for that. Mayor Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. I just had a question of clarification. So we talked about the non-resident user fee, and that's currently paid directly by the user, right? That we're not setting that money aside and then sending a bill to the Township of Southgate, correct?
No, I think the way it was previously implemented is we would track those users, charge them a regular fee, the user, and then Southgate would be sent a bill at end of season and pay that non-resident user fee, or the difference between the regular fee and what a non-resident would typically pay.
Okay, thank you.
So that's just a little bit different than what the library does. Similar though.
Great, thanks, Matt. Any other questions? All right, thank you. The recommendation is on the floor, and I will call for a vote. All in favor? Thank you very much. We don't have any deputations today, and so we will go into the ad hoc committee updates, and this is the Mount Forest Aquatics Ad Hoc Advisory Committee meeting of September 20th, 2021, and I have a recommendation here moved by excuse me, Deputy Mayor Milne and seconded by Councillor Yate that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive the minutes of the September 20th meeting of the Mount Forest Aquatics Ad Hoc Advisory Committee and that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North appoints Shelley Weber as a public member on the committee. I will pass this over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Chair McCabe. Again, the resolution that's before you is for the appointment of an additional member. Some items from the minutes that don't appear as part of the resolution is just that the ad hoc committee has had success with selling their swag, and that committee made a decision to reinvest some of the dollars that they have obtained from selling swag to purchase purchase additional items to sell for fundraising efforts. And the other big topic for discussion at that meeting was that the Lions had volunteered at last week's River Golf Tournament, and the proceeds were going to the aquatics fundraising effort. But those were kind of some of the topics that were discussed in the minutes that aren't part of the resolution.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Mr. Aston, Dan, or Brian, or Andy?
Nope.
All right,
No, I'm
seeing none. Was there a loan, Matt, did you say, from the township to the, I guess, the fundraising for the pool?
Yep, so the township had maybe going back a couple months ago,
Right,
provided a loan for approximately $2,600. The committee had bought merchandise that they have sold as a fundraising effort, and they have not paid back that loan yet. What the decision was to reinvest that in additional swags to pay the township back at a later date.
great. I don't think that's a bad investment at all. Just as a side note, have you heard if sales are going well?
I think the comment at committee was that t-shirt sales have went really well, and they were down to limited sizing availability. But I think by and large, the committee was encouraged by the uptake of merchandise that's been sold for fundraising efforts to date.
Good, that's good to hear. Thank you for that. With that, I have the recommendation is on the floor. Now I will call for all in favor. Thank you very much. That has passed. And moving on to the Arthur BMX, the Arthur BMX Skateboard Park Ad Hoc Advisory Committee meeting on September 21st, 2021. There's a recommendation that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive the minutes of the September 21st meeting of the Arthur BMX Skateboard Park Ad Hoc Advisory Committee, and that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North approve a budget of $200,000 for concrete and equipment with possible additions as funds become available. That the Arthur Lions request authorization to proceed with installation of any required cement pad to meet the specifications of the successful BMX skateboard park proponent, and that the request for the proposal tender reflect that cement pad specification requirements be provided by the bidder with installation to be completed by others. I will say that was moved by you, Deputy Mayor Milne, and seconded by you, Councillor Yates. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair McCabe. First off, that this meeting was attended by a contingent of school-age children from Arthur, so it was a great opportunity to hear from some local kids and hopefully future users of this amenity, what kind of features they're seeing at different skate parks that they would like to have incorporated into the Arthur skate park. And that is something that staff are currently working towards drafting what a scope for this project will look like. The other two parts of the resolution is just to establish a budget for the project, which was established at $200,000, and that becomes fairly useful as it relates to developing the scope. And the Arthur Lions continue to want to pour that concrete pad. So there's sort of an explicit wording there related to that concrete pad, just to make sure that it's well known by this committee and council on how we'll be proceeding with that proposal for the BMX skate park. Otherwise, certainly willing to field any questions related to that meeting.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks for the report. Members of the committee, any questions for Matt? Go ahead, member Yake.
So Matt, so we've established that we're gonna, there's a budget. In the second part, where it says the Lions Club request authorization to proceed with the installation. So are they gonna be in charge of sending out, like do we have the specifications, I guess? And are they gonna be the ones that are gonna be sending those out and reviewing those and I guess recommending one of the bidders? Is that whose ultimate job is that going to be?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yep. So there's sort of maybe two parts to that question, member Yake, related to that. The first, as it relates to the concrete pad, the tender will basically, or the RFP will ask that the successful bidder provide that specification for what the concrete pad for their equipment needs to look like. And that'll be something that we'll have to receive fairly early on in the project and supply to the Lions, because the Lions would like to be the one to constructing that cement pad. I think the second part of your question might have to do with the evaluation of proposals that come in from different bidders. And at the meeting, the Arthur Lions had asked for consideration to being involved with the evaluation of those proposals. So like later on in the agenda, there's the pool project, which is a conceptual design. Those proposals came in. 3 members of staff were selected to review those proposals, and then basically met afterwards and just reviewed each independent score, ultimately towards providing the recommendation that's involved for the concept design for the pool. I think what the Lions were asking is how can they be involved with that evaluation process? And that really will be something that is part of the drafting of the RFP that will be reviewed by the BMX Skate Park Ad Hoc Committee on October 19th. And that scope will also come to this committee for the November 2nd meeting is the intended plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. The idea that the Lions have for the concrete pad, that's similar to what the Optimists did for the splash pad when they built it. It's like to township regulations, but they did it in kind, I think. Is that right, Matt?
I wasn't here when the splash pad in Arthur was built, but I understand that's a similar approach.
Okay, yep, that's kind of what I thought. Sorry, Mayor Lennox, did I see your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So my questions are really along the same line as Dan's. So if the Lions are going to take the role of installing the concrete, or maybe I should back up. Do we normally provide engineering oversight as a part of the township's role in projects like this? I guess the first question. And then following up on that, in terms of meeting necessary specifications, would we continue to use engineering oversight on that, or would we be relying on the vendor to provide that certification for that product?
I think, wasn't it BM Ross that set the standards for at least for the Optimist splash pad, but then it was kind of in kind that they had to follow it. But Mike, I see you're on the call here, so please jump in.
Just listening.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Matt.
So my understanding in Arthur was that Triton was involved at some level with the splash pad. In Mount Forest, we had BM Ross involved kind of after the fact. I think in this instance, the Lions or the BMX ad hoc committee understanding is that the $200,000 is to purchase equipment in that concrete pad, and to date, there has not been a lot of talk about having engineering oversight as it relates to this project. And I think if the concrete pad is poured by the Arthur Lions, it adds a level of complexity to the project. And to respond directly to Mayor Lennox's comment, I think it will be difficult. I don't know what position a contractor will take as it relates to certifying someone else's work. But at a minimum, I think there'd be a cost associated with them doing that activity. But to date, there's been no engineering service provider, and there has been no engineering service provider involvement.
Go ahead. I think you said you had a follow-up, Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. I just, I guess the question in my mind is, the Lions are doing the heavy lifting in terms of raising the money for this project, which of course we're very grateful for. But we're going to accept this asset and run it for hopefully many, many years. I just worry a little bit about that we have some accountability associated with the longevity of the components that go into this. And I'm just not sure with a circumstance like that, unless we're going to pay for engineering oversight, how we get that level of accountability.
That's a fair point, Mayor. And and we are grateful for all the service clubs and all the amenities that they build, and ultimately they get handed over to the township for upkeeping and maintenance. And yeah, we don't want substandard concrete going in and us having to repair it almost every year. So there should be some sort of a standard or a level that should be adhered to. And I'm pretty sure that's what we did with the Optimists in Arthur. But go ahead, Andy.
So I guess the next phase of that is, if we're going to have the specifications and the oversight, there's a cost attached to that. Does that go into the budget of the project, or are we picking that up at the township's expense?
I don't think the Lions have been asked that question. I think that's the first time I've heard it, but it's a good question. Mike, I see you're off mute, so have at her.
To answer that question directly, based on past experiences, the community groups tend not to enjoy the idea of covering engineering oversight costs, and make that very clear. They're happy to fundraise for the infrastructure and the equipment. They're not happy to pay permit fees, engineering oversights, things of that nature. They believe that's our responsibility, and that's been the way it's been addressed in at least the last 5 years.
So there's been a kind of a precedent set where you would say, Mike, like they want their money to go towards
begrudgingly,
the
yes.
and that's it, and none of the outlying costs, so to speak.
I think we all understand the Lions in this example believe that they will make a very good case and get a very good price as it relates to the cement pad because it's a local project. They're the Lions and they want to take that on. But I think this committee and the mayor has raised this, it does create a certain level of risk for the township because we're going to assume it. And typically the contractor whose oversight of the overall project would include all of these things typically loses that. And they kind of tend to say, well, we don't warranty that work. That's not our work anymore. It becomes our risk to assume, which it is fine. It just is a risk.
I guess there's no real way to kind of mitigate that unless there was some engineering oversight, I suppose.
That's typically when staff will suggest that we should have some sort of oversight, whether it's geo or an engineer or somebody who's checking the specs to give us some level of insurance of what we're getting in terms of the end product. It's maybe overkill, maybe. I don't know. I don't think it is. As Mayor Lennox has indicated, we're expected to, once these amenities are built, to maintain them for not just 5 years, we're talking 20, 30, and 50 years. So yeah, we want to make sure the product affords that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Doesn't it also come down to liability, Mike? Is there a liability issue moving forward?
Yes, Councillor Egan, I think a little bit. It makes us a little anxious in terms of we lose some level of control, and yeah, especially when you're dealing with equipment and that are really public utilized, right? Same thing happened with the BIA and the outdoor gym equipment that happened in Arthur. Really great. We were supportive of it, but we weren't really part of the project in terms of the actual install. And we're left with kind of hoping and praying that, it's done appropriately, is done properly, and that it doesn't create a long-term liability for us. And knock on wood, that's been the case, but it is a risk associated with these type of projects that we lose some of the oversight on.
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about the outdoor gym here a little later on in the agenda, but am I hearing, sorry, go ahead there, Andy.
So I have a question on a different area of the discussion, and that is the involvement of the Lions in the evaluation of proposals. So, and I'm just trying to understand how this is going to work. Are we involving them in setting the criteria and the scoring system, and involving them in scoring proposals, or where does our sharing of involvement begin and end?
Great question. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I guess the intent was to put together a draft RFP document that would include the evaluation criteria, and that would be reviewed at the October 19th meeting as well as this meeting. But you can probably look at it'll be very similar to the evaluation matrix that's part of the pool report that's part of this agenda. It'll look at schedule references, company overview. Cost has a big part in the evaluation of these proposals. But whether or not there's a disconnect between what will be brought forward on August or October 19th and what expectation of that committee is remains to be seen, but that was kind of the intent.
Keep going, Andy.
Thanks, Chair. I guess my recommendation would be to make sure that the Lions are buying into the scoring system before we get further down the road, so that we don't end up with dissatisfied people when we get a proposal and the scoring that says one thing that may not agree with what the Lions are have in mind. So I recognize what I'm suggesting is a tall order for staff, but I think hopefully the committee members as well will support making sure that they agree with the scoring up front before we get partway down the road, because it could get very messy otherwise.
Yeah, I think, and going back to the engineering oversight, it kind of goes hand in hand. I think with that, we want to have it built right, and we want to have it on the engineering side of things with the oversight, and then with the scoring, we should have input from all parties that are involved. Are you putting that recommendation forward, Andy, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective, I think we absolutely have to have the Lions buying in at the scoring level first, or we're in big trouble later if it doesn't come out the way that they expect it to.
Would you like the recommendation to read that they are, obviously words to this effect, that they're part of the scoring and engineering?
Well,
I want that as two separate items.
It's, from my perspective, it's two separate items, but I think, I'm supportive of the Lions being part of it, but I think we got to agree to the terms up front. Let's not wait till we get to the evaluating the proposals. We need to agree that this is the criteria that we're setting out to evaluate those proposals against.
Matt, I saw your hand up there, and I'll get to you next, Brian, sorry.
Thanks. Just for clarification, are we talking about the Arthur Lions or the Arthur BMX Skateboard Park Ad Hoc Advisory Committee? Because we'll just need to be clear which group we're intending. So there's 3 Lions members on that ad hoc committee.
That's a fair point. I would probably suggest the ad hoc committee, but go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and it's just another point of clarification that we need to get up front before we get too far down the road.
Right, and back to you, Deputy Mayor Milne.
Thank you, Steve. I guess at some point, if you're in the bottom of a hole, you should probably stop digging. And it strikes me that we're digging a pretty deep hole here. It just gets, as the mayor has pointed out, that if things do go south, it's just going to get real messy. And I'm wondering if it's, at this point, the committee decides that this is our project. We want the Lions to help fundraise for it. It'll be a Lions, they'll get full credit for fundraising, whatever. But it's going to have to be a township project in terms of setting up the criteria, oversight, hiring the contractor and all that kind of stuff. Because otherwise, like Andy says, it's going to get real messy. I think if things go south, not that they will, but they could. And I wonder if we just bite the bullet now before we get into a bigger mess, and say, look, Lions Club, we appreciate the fundraising. You're going to get full credit for it, but it's got to be a township project in terms of construction. It just seems a lot cleaner that way to me. Then you've got full control of quality control and all the rest of it, liability and all the rest of it, to allow a third party to jump in there and do part of it. And they may well do a great job, but they might not. I don't know. And unless you've got full control of the project, you can't guarantee that.
Oh, good point, Brian. Dan, you had your hand up as well?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Brian. I mean, Brian, we just just look at the hospital situation that we've recently done here. You hire contractors to, that you think are gonna ultimately do a good job, but in both cases, in Mount Forest and in Center Wellington, look at the issues that came up and the challenges that were faced along the way, that almost got into court proceedings, and there was lots of legal discussion about, costs and how things were done or not done. So I think you gotta be, this is certainly a smaller scale, on a smaller scale, but ultimately I think we need to be in control.
Excuse me. Yeah, I would agree with and echo everyone's opinions here. I don't know if Mike, you were able to capture that recommendation or not, or Andy, do you have wording to that effect that you would like to hear, or?
From my perspective, I just wanted to have the discussion and see, how do we resolve some of these issues? Because I don't like the potential fallout down the road, and I'd like to avoid it if we can. And I'm quite happy to accept anybody's way to approach this that has a way to do it. I just, I don't like to be the downer, but I want to make sure we're going in with our eyes wide open.
Well, and the thing is, like having your eyes wide open and not tying any future council to repairs that we never kind of set out a policy for here today. So I think it's wise to do that right now. How would that wording look, Mike? Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna ask, I'm not aware of any promises or commitments that have been made to the Lions Club. So maybe that, maybe we're too far down the road to back the card up. I don't know, but Mike will know that, I guess.
That's why he's on the call, Brian. Go ahead, Mike.
So Chair McCabe, on the floor right now, I think it's still on the floor, is a resolution that basically says the Arthur Lions Club requests authorization to proceed with installation of a required cement pad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I'm hearing maybe we're not prepared as a committee to endorse that portion of the recommendation. I'm not sure. That's kind of what I've heard, but
so can we
this is on the floor.
So can we amend part 3 of that? Or do we excuse me.
If I could, Mr. Chair, perhaps a motion to defer this for another month and let some discussion with the Lions Club to maybe, I don't know, soften the point a little bit and discuss with them our point of view as to how this could roll out. Would that be helpful? Maybe?
Yeah, it would, I think, but I think we still have to either say yes or no to this recommendation. I mean, it's on the floor, as Mike said. I think, just rereading it here.
So just
Sorry, go ahead,
as
Mike.
you're reading that, Chair McCabe, maybe I'll take a quick step back, maybe this will be helpful. It might not be. The meeting that this came out of was basically, there was 2 things that were impressed upon staff at the meeting. One was the Lions want to address the cement pad, and that's why on the fly staff, aka Mike, came up with this 3rd bullet that is in front of you now, because that was the expectation of the Lions members of that committee. And the other point is the Lions are very committed to this being built by July 1st of next year. And that was why, as Matt has spoken about, timelines associated with the scope and the RFP were established in order to allow that to happen. I appreciate Councillor Milne's recommendation. I appreciate it, but it will jeopardize both the items that came out of that meeting. The timeline and the cement pad piece. I'm happy to go back there, but some of you guys are going to have to come with me when we do that with the ad hoc committee.
I can go
I
back.
know Steve's not busy that night. He'll go.
Yeah, I will go. I won't be the heavy, but anyways. Just because if say we just endorse this recommendation, it goes to council, then council can say, hey, listen, we've got to stop here. Then just because our council recommends it, like it's kind of like a fail stop, I would think, because I'm pretty sure the three members from Wellington North might have an issue or bring it up. But is there a way to, I guess, to amend this so that part 3, so we address part 3, Mike?
Okay,
He's squirming.
I'm thinking while I'm squirming. Yeah, I want to go to Councillor Yake's point around the scale of the project. And I'm not here to advocate for the Lions necessarily, but I think you're going to get a very passionate cry from the Lions members that the cement pad is a cement pad is a cement pad. And what the heck is wrong with you guys? We can get the cement pad built at a significant discount that saves the township and every person that's ever going to use that piece of equipment a significant amount of money. That's what you're going to hear. Is it the alternative for us to say, we agree? And that's what this really says. Good. We as a committee and as a council say, there's some risk associated with this. Let's bring our engineers in to oversee this part of the project to alleviate some of that. It's going to cost us some money. Some of the savings that the Lions are going to feel from the cement pad, we're going to end up paying as a corporation. But maybe that is what keeps the peace and keeps all parties somewhat happy. I don't think it's ideal. Let me be the first to say that. But I just want you guys to think about scale, and I want you to think about the ownership that the Lions, the fundraisers, feel about this project.
I totally agree with you, Mike. And I know, Dan, you and I have had chats about this in the past where, there's an opportunity from a service group to put an amenity like this together. And where is the townships? How does the township get involved aside from donating the land and waiving fees? Maybe this is one of the ways. It's a safeguard for us. It safeguards us in the past. And like you said, it maybe keeps the peace, an uneasy peace that it might be, but it might, I think, alleviate, ultimately our residents, and that's whose money we're here to protect and spend wisely. But then keep the Lions happy as well if they can go ahead and do this, if it's up to a certain standard. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to ask, when Mike, you say at a significant saving, what's your estimation of significant saving? If you add on the cost of the engineering, are you still going to have a saving? Or is it a wash?
I think it
Roughly.
depends on who you ask, Councillor Bill. To be honest, I tend to believe that it's probably going to end up being a wash, but I don't want to minimize the fact that even if we have a reputable firm doing the skateboard BMX park, there may be points where along the project we say, I don't know what's going on over there. We might want to have our engineers engaged anyways. So this kind of makes it clear that they're going to be engaged from the get-go, I guess. And again, I'm on the fly here a little bit. And
is us spending some money up front as a township going to save us money in the long run and not tie future hands of council?
I just know the conversation with the community groups who are raising the funds is they want the opportunity to go to a local supplier to get things that seem obvious, right? Whether it's the lumber or it's the concrete or those. So we struggle from a staff perspective trying to find ways to make that work. do I try not to roll my eyes when they say we're going to save significant money? Yeah, sometimes I try, because I don't know what that means. And you know, they may feel that way, but the Lions do have a lot of tradespeople as part of the Lions. So yeah, I give them credit for that.
Well, and I'll go out on a limb and say, as far as Mike on the fly, he's doing pretty good today so far. So, yeah, I agree. The scale is relevant here. It's a concrete pad. I get it. Sure, I'd be supportive of his suggestion
Go ahead,
to put
thanks,
some
Brian.
oversight onto it.
Sorry, go ahead. Thank you, Brian, and go ahead, Andy, and then I'll come to you, Dan.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I guess then if we're gonna, and I agree, the scale is relevant. If we're going to accept the recommendation, I think we should put an and further that the township will pick up the cost of oversight during construction, just in the interest of transparency.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of the amendment that I was hoping to come out of this. So, yeah, I think we can probably add that as well. I mean, it's still on the floor for discussion. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I guess, I'm all for keeping the peace. And this could turn into a bit of a cluster if we make too many significant changes. So I'm okay as long as we do have a little bit of insight into the whole project. I mean, these situations are going to arise, on every project that comes forward to the township, whether it's a skateboard park, a pool, whatever the case may be. So I think these are issues that we have to look at and understand that we have to deal with them when they come forward. And for us to be able to sleep at night knowing that it's been overseen by our engineers, then so be it. I want to. They've worked hard to get to this point. They got a lot of work to do to get to their July 1st point, and I really don't want to hold them up if at all possible.
And I don't think we would hold them up if we put in a quick amendment about that. And like Mike said, cement is cement, but in the long run, yes, they're putting it in, and it ultimately becomes ownership of the residents of Wellington North. And that's, like I said earlier, that's we've got to kind of protect and make sure that it's done properly. I know it will be, but like you said, to have the assurance that it is done by an oversight, I think that's shows our willingness to make sure that it's up to snuff. And I think I don't think the Lions would have that much of a opposition to it, to make sure that it's going to be viable for a number of years. Go ahead, Andy.
Just to looking forward, I mean, I'm happy to proceed with the recommendation as it's prepared, or if we can choose to add something to it. But we might want to give consideration to future projects like this, and whether or not we as a township want to take ownership of the project right from the get-go and say, look, we're going to be the ones owning the project. We're going to be the ones procuring it through our procurement policy, which may not favor local vendors, but this is council's procurement policy that we have to fulfill from a legal perspective. And because, I mean, look at let's face facts, the pool's coming down the pipe, no pun intended. And we need to be clear about this, because if somebody has expectations around the pool that we're going to get a local contractor to pour the deck, that gets even more messy than a project of this scale.
Yeah, and that is fair. It is, I guess, at the leisure of council to put a policy like that together. With the pool, though, I believe that the township itself is building that, and I think we will have control of that and all the vendors that are going to, I think, hopefully go out to RFP, and hopefully it is a local person, but I think with the township owning the pool itself and the infrastructure, not the add-ons that the ad hoc committee want to put in, but owning the actual structure itself, hopefully that will kind of eliminate that need. But yeah, I'm all for looking at a policy for possible amenities like this being built in the future. I think I saw your hand up, Member Mill.
I was just, Andy said something or mentioned something there about, procuring local suppliers, and there's a question to Mike. Are we skirting close to the edge of trouble if we allow a group like the Lions Club to weight an RFP towards a local company? Because you're not allowed to do that. That'll be something that you'll need to watch pretty close, I think.
Yeah, Councillor Milne, it's so the idea of separating the pad from the entire project, yeah, I think we're talking about two things at issue here. That was, yeah, a recommendation to appease the Lions, basically us saying, okay, you're going to deal with the pad. How you procure it is up to you. The rest of the stuff, we're going to handle it. We're going to deal with it in our way through our procurement policy. Having the Lions or members of the ad hoc committee play a part in scoring the proposals, I would say makes me a little bit uneasy in for the reasons that you're maybe alluding to. We typically try to keep that as a staff initiative because staff are trained, they have a professional requirements. And hey, not that we don't hear from local contractors, we certainly do.
Oh yeah.
But it's different for us in that we can separate our relationship from the contractors in ways that sometimes community groups can. So the idea of the Lions or the ad hoc committee being part of understanding what the scoring process is going to look like, I have no issue with that. I think that's a reasonable approach. The ask about being part of the approval makes me a little anxious. Council at the end of the day holds the key to the procurement policy. They don't know that sometimes maybe, or don't want to know that, but they can waive portions of it. They have that authority, but it's there to protect the corporation, obviously, right? And when you start, you're absolutely right. When you start kind of weaving your way in and out of it, it's creating risk for everybody involved. So yeah, we would love it, but these community projects are really, really challenging in this nature because you don't want to lose the ownership that the Lions or any of the other groups have in the project. And when you start saying things, well, no, we'll decide who's getting the project, like it doesn't make them feel good about it. They want to be engaged throughout and they want to have ownership. And some of them say things like, well, we raised the $200,000. What the hell have you done? And I can't dispute any of that. They make very valid points. And it's difficult from a council perspective. We acknowledge that as a staff to say, sorry, Lions, thanks for the money. We'll let you know how things go. We'll call you for the ribbon cutting. Doesn't go over
Yeah,
well.
I appreciate the sensitivity around it. So thanks, Mike.
To go back, Mayor Lennox, as it relates to a potential amendment, I've jotted down, and further that township will cover any oversight / engineering costs required as part of the project deemed appropriate by staff. So that takes, it gives staff a lot of empowerment, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. Some might be skittish about that, but I think that's what I'm hearing. That we, township acknowledges that there's costs and that's not part of the fundraising, but it does give us staff some empowerment that when we need particular oversight, we can make those steps happen.
I think that sounds all right. And again, kind of, I don't think it takes that much away from the Lions, just because we want this to be done right. And so do they at the end of the
Yep.
day. And I think putting this amendment or clause in it, like I said, I would have a hard time believing that they would have an issue with that. So. I
They
guess
may
I'll
think
have to-
some of the costs are redundant, Councillor McCabe, but I think that's okay. I think we can overcome that.
I agree with you. I think engineering costs up front to ensure the longevity of the amenity itself, I think far outweigh the cost of not doing anything at all. So to the mover and the seconder, are you okay with that amendment? I don't know if I'm going to read the whole recommendation again, but if you're okay with that amendment, are there any other questions or comments?
So, Mr. Chair, to be clear, are you asking for a mover and seconder to amend the motion or just to a friendly amendment?
Just a friendly amendment, to be honest with you, Brian.
That's fine. Yep.
Just as an add-in, if the mover and seconder are okay with that. Usually we might have them initial it, but I guess we'll have it verbally. Again, I'll ask if there's any questions or comments for a call. Seeing none, the recommendation is on the floor with that amendment that Mike has added and jotted down and has added to the recommendation. Anyone need it read again or? Okay. No, seeing no questions, all in favor? Thank you very much, and thank you for that great discussion. That was good. I think we've brought some stuff to light that hopefully for our council in the future, when service groups come to us with possible building of amenities, we have some sort of we can build a policy from our council with this kind of stuff in mind. So thank you for that good discussion. And further, going on to the BMX skateboard ad hoc committee of the special meeting on September 27th, 2021. I have a recommendation that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive the minutes of the September 27th special meeting of the Arthur BMX Skateboard Park Ad Hoc Advisory Committee, and further that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North appoint Jack Baker as youth member on that committee. I'll pass this over to you, Matt.
Yep. Thanks, Chair McCabe. And this one's fairly straightforward. The recommended appointee was one of the youth members that was part of the September 21st meeting. And just in order to get more involved with the project, there was a subsequent meeting on the 27th called just to allow this youth member to have a vote as it relates to the project going forward.
Thank you, Matt. I know I was on that call and it was about a 5-minute call, and it's nice to have a young member on that as a youth member for the committee. Any questions or comments? I'll say that was moved by Deputy Milne and seconded by Member Yake. All in favor? Thank you very much. We're almost on time, so we'll go to the reports now. OPS 2021-030 being a report on the award of the concept design of pool and aquatics facility. And I have a recommendation here moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne that the Rec, Park and Leisure Committee recommend the Council of Wellington, Council of the Township of Wellington North receive report OPS 2021-030, being a report on the award of the concept design of a pool and aquatics facility. And further, that the committee recommend council award the township's request for proposal 2021-008 to architects Tillman, Ruth Robinson, Inc. at an upset limit of $14,900 plus applicable taxes. And further, that the committee recommend council approve a contingency budget of $5,000 plus a typical applicable taxes for this project. And further, that the council authorize the director of operation or their designate to sign any necessary agreements with the successful builders to execute this project. And with that, I will pass that over to you, Matt.
Yep, thank you, Chair McCabe. The report that's before you is really the outcome of an RFP process that we did for, I think, July, August, and a chunk into September. We had about 26 plan takers, but only received 2 bids on the project. Those bids were subsequently evaluated by staff using the evaluation criteria that's contained within the report. And the outcome is that the recommendation is that architects Tillman, Ruth, and Robinson be awarded the project. Obviously, there was a big disparity between the costs of each proposal. But I think staff feel comfortable that what Tillman, Ruth, Robinson put forward made sense. There is an ask here for a contingency budget, and the contingency budget really would just be utilized if additional public consultation was required either by committee or council. And that's kind of why the contingency budget is there. The budget we have for this activity was $51,000, so we're within budget. And maybe that last clause of the last clause of the recommendation, I guess, should read that committee recommend council rather than just that council. So that was an error on my part. It should read and further that committee recommend council authorize. That was missing from the recommendation. So certainly willing to field any questions related to this RFP.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for that report. With the $14,900 from Tillman, Ruth, and Robinson, what all public consultations does that give, and does that include presentation to council specifically, or would that contingency fund of $5,000 kind of pay for that? Because I think any kind of a presentation needs to obviously be seen by the Township of Wellington North for sure, as well as the public.
Yeah, the schedule as proposed would see a committee meeting presentation. So that's envisioned to be the ad hoc committee and this committee here, kind of a joint presentation, but as well, there would be a public consultation or an open house associated with the project. So there'd be some initial staff meetings with the proponent to put together some conceptual designs that would then go through a public consultation process to arrive, and then three conceptual designs would be developed that would be presented as part of a public consultation process, and ultimately the selected design would be presented to that committee group, is sort of the way the project is anticipated to roll out.
So it would go back to the kind of, like you said, as a joint between our group here and the ad hoc, but ultimately it would be up to council to approve it, though. But they would just be approving what they want council to approve.
Yeah, the way it is right now is that the presentation would happen at this committee, and this committee would make a recommendation to council on who to move forward with. Again, the idea with that contingency budget is if during the process an additional meeting is required, that would allow us some flexibility for requesting that meeting.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Aston? I have another quick one, I guess, then, Matt. I'm not putting the cart before the horse. If we hear favorably from Southgate, if they were to want to contribute towards the Mount Forest pool, how would we, can we invite Deputy Mayor Milne or their mayor into a meeting as well, or would they just be invited to the public meeting, or how does that, what's the proper route for that?
Yeah, I think Southgate residents for sure could participate in the public open house. And the chair of this committee could invite members of Southgate to participate to this meeting, or the meeting that has the presentation from the proponent. The logistics of that, I guess I would maybe have to talk to the clerk just about how exactly that looks, but certainly would be something that could be worked out to ensure that they get adequate or have adequate representation related to the project as required.
Great, thank you, Matt. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, you have the recommendation on the floor, and I will call all in favor. Thank you very much, and thank you, Matt, again for that report. And moving on to OPS 2021-032, being a report on the township's recreation portfolio and resourcing. I have a recommendation here moved by Deputy Mayor Milne and seconded by Member Yig that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive for information report OPS 2021-032, being a report on the township's recreation portfolio and resourcing. And further, that the committee directs staff to bring back a report with a recommendation to a further future committee meeting on a strategy for the Con recreation area. Again, over to you, Matt.
Yep. Thanks, Chair McCabe. So the report that's before you, I guess, really has two sort of separate discussions. The first has to do with the Con recreation area, which has a pavilion, a playground, and a ball diamond. And over the years, the community group that at one point was more involved with that amenity or that recreation property has either moved away or otherwise just isn't as involved with that area. So really the intent of the report is to get a sense from committee maybe what a good way forward is for the Con recreation area. As well, the report speaks to sort of just more broadly that as we add additional recreation amenities, and since the 2018 Recreation Master Plan, there's been 2 splash pads, the Arthur exercise equipment, and the Lion side. And consistent with the recommendation from the Rec Master Plan of just reviewing staffing complement, just wanted to put that out there as an idea, and at least maybe have a discussion, better understand sort of committee's wishes as it relates to that. Certainly when we get approached by community groups for these amenities, they're great amenities and they offer services to the community. But if I use the lion sign just as an example, and that's the lion sign that's at Queen and Cork Street in Mount Forest. That's an amenity that the community group raised a lot of money to put in. And it kind of gets handed over to the township. And what it means from a day-to-day operations standpoint is that the township has someone on staff who regularly has to go and update that messaging. When we do have to troubleshoot that, because it's a relatively new amenity, typically we do hear from the community groups that were involved if it's not working. And that just diverts the recreation team's focus to that amenity and getting it up and going. And yeah, it just diverts our attention, and it seems like there's lots of recreation amenities that are planned and sort of brought online over the last couple of years. And it is, at some point, it gets to a level where I think as a committee or as a corporation, we just have to be aware of that and sort of deliberately plan and resource it appropriately. I know when we talked about the BMX skate park in Arthur, one of the comments at the meeting that night was if we do build a BMX sort of jump track or pump track, those tracks require a lot of maintenance just in order to ensure that water doesn't sort of damage them. And just the township team certainly wants to meet expectation related to service level of these amenities. What it means sometimes is when we have new amenities, it's challenging to keep our existing level of service on some of our other amenities. When the ones that have just come online, typically those are situations where the community groups are very engaged in those because it's more front of mind and it's something that's a more recent amenity. So I don't know if that serves as a preamble. Hopefully the report does some justice at trying to explain what I verbally tried to do a Cole's Notes version, but certainly willing to hear are interested in hearing the conversation and just better understanding kind of committee's thoughts and ideas as it relates to some of this.
Thanks for that, Matt. And I'm going to kind of split the conversation into two parts. We'll look at the first half of the recommendation, then we'll look at the recommendation for the Conrec area, I think, secondly. I agree. We have great service groups that build great amenities and then hand it over, like the sign, like the BMX skateboard park, like the Mount Forest and Arthur splash pads, etc. And it goes on. And I mean, it goes back to what we were just chatting about. How do we maintain them and make them viable for future generations and our residents? And we have to have I think the staff to maintain this kind of infrastructure. It's kind of similar to the roads. The more infrastructure that we build, the more it takes to maintain. And I think staff has done incredibly well over the last number of years since I've been on council with the additions of everything that has come on due to, I think, the rec master plan. And it was ambitious and we knew that, but I think we're tackling it very well. So I'll open the floor. Having said that, I'll open the floor to members of the committee for any questions or comments and talk about resourcing. Dan was first to the line. I'll let him go and then I'll speak to you, Brian.
Perfect. Well, thanks for the report, Matt. Very thorough and in-depth in regards to some history and some other things that are going on. It's an important report and it's an important discussion that we have here. And I know you're looking at it from a recreation point with this report, but in general, I think this is a township-wide issue. This isn't just recreation. This has to be this whole report could be encumbered township wide, and I think we need to, as a municipality, look at the whole picture, not just recreation. So I'm just putting that out there, but again, thanks for the report. Thanks for bringing it to light. I think it's something that we all kind of have known that we need to make some kind of decisions and make some changes. But hopefully this kind of gets it on the table and opens up some dialogue. So thanks for the report.
Thanks, Member Yake. Member Milne.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you, Matt, for the report. These little parks, little recreation areas throughout the township, it's no different than a lot of rural townships, certainly not different than Southgate. We have them scattered throughout the municipality, and the use by the community ebbs and flows depending on the number of kids in the community and the interest of the surrounding community. And I think it adds to the quality of life in your community to have these little parks scattered about. And I know there's a cost to it, but I think it's a cost well spent. If nothing else, it makes the municipality look better. They're green space, they're open. I don't have any problem supporting the maintenance of these little parks, and I think the one at Con is no different in that respect. So, in all honesty, I thought there was a strategy in Wellington North for all these little parks, and but if there isn't, certainly support putting one in place.
Thank you, Member Milne. And I believe there was a while ago, we talked about what it would cost to kind of renovate Con and a lot of the other, some of the other parks that we have as well. So
Maybe that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, there was, I believe, money allocated to that. I might be wrong. You can refresh my memory, Matt. But yeah, no one wants to drive through a small town and see monkey bars that are half fallen down and rusted. So yeah, they're great amenities. They cost money, and I think Mike's favorite line is that rec is a lost leader. But we all know, and this is one of Andy's lines, that rec is also the face of our community as well, and we want to make that as nice as possible for people being here for the first time or moving here for the first time. Andy, you look like you were going to say something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to again thank Matt for the report. It's a great reminder of the fact that when we're adding these things, when we say yes to them, we also are accepting the responsibility for the ongoing cost of maintenance. And it's a good reminder of that. It's easy to revel in the excitement of the new item, but there is some reality that comes with it as well. So yeah, I'm largely supportive of doing what we need to do to keep these things in good repair. Although there are occasions when we may need to consider what services we offer in certain locations. It may come down to whether they're being used or not. We've seen, as Member Milne alluded to, things come and go. There's an ebb and flow. We've seen baseball be super popular to not popular at all, back to popularity. We see soccer fields gaining in popularity in some places and not in others. So we have to be flexible and be willing to make the decision sometimes to say, okay, no, if this isn't being used, then we're not going to maintain it in this location. We're going to put it somewhere else where it is needed, kind of thing. So absolutely, this is something we need to be revisiting on a regular basis to make sure that we're providing the services that residents want and keeping it in the repair that they expect, while also trying to respect the fact that, they don't want to spend, not everybody wants to spend huge dollars on recreation.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. And that kind of, I think, dovetails into the second part of this recommendation, and that is the future strategy for the Con area. And I know Matt and I had a bit of a chat about this the other day. And Matt brought it up, and it's a good similarity, and it's the the old South Luther School on the town line between us and Dufferin County. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze, sorry. Or not. And ultimately, we handed that back to them, to a small group to maintain it, and maybe that's, excuse me, and maybe that's what we, I'm not saying that's the strategy we need to take in con. I know that's kind of what you had mentioned, not that you had mentioned taking township responsibility away from it, but we have to look at all aspects of it and how much it's used and go from there. So I think a strategy for the con rec area would be good. Any questions or comments on the second half of that recommendation? Seeing none, this recommendation is on the floor, and if I get a vote, all in favor? Thank you very much. That has passed. And we'll go on to the next report, and that is OPS 2021-033, being a report on the Arthur Outdoor Gym. I have two recommendations here. I can read them both. And we can just, I guess we can decide on which one we want to go with after some discussion. Is that the proper procedure, Mike? Or Andy, you have more experience with this? I guess I can read both recommendations and see where we go. See who I'm not going to appoint someone to move and second this. I'll read both recommendations and I guess we can take it from there. So recommendation one, that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive for information report OPS 2021-033, being a report on the Arthur Outdoor Gym. And further, that committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North direct staff to sign that Arthur Outdoor Gym closed from November 1st to April 30th each year. Then I have actually, you know what? I'm going to switch gears because these are kind of fairly two separate, not really linked at all. So let me, I will put Deputy Mayor Milne on as a mover of that, and Member Yake as the seconder on this recommendation. And I will maybe get Matt to talk to that before we go on to recommendation two.
Yep, thanks.
Go ahead.
Yep, thanks, Chair McCabe. That recommendation is really consistent with what we do with other parks. We would just sign it that it'll be closed for that period. The location of that park being sort of on a triangular piece of property, the snow plows will inevitably sort of box that in, but really was just looking for committee support that that's an appropriate approach for that amenity, recognizing that this amenity sort of came up through the BIA, and this committee necessarily hasn't talked about it as a park per se a ton over the last year, but certainly willing to answer questions related to it.
Thank you, Matt, and good to bring this forward. We haven't really chatted about it all that much, but I will go to you, Andy, for questions or comments.
Thanks, Chair McCabe. Just one question, and that is, when we talk about closing the outdoor gym, are we talking about posting signs and declaring it closed, or are we talking about putting fence around it or something to prevent people from using it?
Just signage.
Okay, thank you.
Just further than that, is some of that equipment removable or no? As you can probably tell, I haven't been exercising on it at all, but I'm not sure if it's removable equipment or not, Matt.
Tom might know better. I'm going to say it's not easily removable. I think it's intended to stay outside for the winter season.
Tom, I see you coming on, so please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Councilor McCabe. I thought I had seen you down at the gym, but I guess I was wrong. No, by the maintenance manual, it's not removable.
Okay,
You could take it out if you were going to replace it, but it would be, you wouldn't take it out yearly.
okay, thank you very much. So signage and that's it. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Well, the sign is just to remove the liability so that if someone did decide to climb on it, it's no different than signing a sidewalk saying no different or no winter maintenance kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and we typically remove the trash receptacle during that period then as well.
Right, right. So just in case member Yake decided to go down to do a few strides on the thing that, you know, he could take his shovel with him and dig it out and do that.
I have a treadmill that I use inside.
We'll put it out on the driveway and then let the neighbors see that you're actually getting your exercise.
Okay, I'll think about that.
Don't scare the kids though.
That's good, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Matt on recommendation 1? Go ahead, Andy.
Just a question, and that is because of the BIA's involvement with the creation of this, has any discussion to date have occurred in regard to this, you know, the ongoing maintenance and or the partnership beyond the initial installation?
Just with the economic development officer to date.
Okay, thank you.
All right, yep, go ahead, Andy.
So just as a courtesy, then maybe we should send our intentions to the BIA just to let them know that this is what we're intending to do, and give an opportunity for feedback before we implement it.
Fair enough, not a bad idea, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of recommendation 1? Thank you very much, that's passed, and on to the second part of this, recommendation 2, that the Rec, Parks, and Leisure Committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North direct staff to draft an agreement with the Arthur BIA for the care, maintenance, and future replacement of the Arthur Outdoor Gym. And further, that the committee recommend council support that the operations team be responsible for the maintenance of the Arthur Outdoor Gym, and that future major capital costs be split, no numbers on that yet, between the township and the Arthur BIA. And further, that the committee directs staff to bring the resulting draft agreement back to a future meeting of committee. I will say that was moved by you, member Yake, and seconded by member Milne. And I will open the floor to Matt and to take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Chair McCabe. Yeah, the second recommendation flowing from this report is really just to try to formalize, I guess, formalize expectations related to the Arthur Outdoor Gym. I think maybe one of the things that's said in the report is that open and closed period would be one of the things that would get detailed in an agreement. This would be something that staff would take away and kind of work with the BIA to come up with that agreement. And the split for future major capital costs has been intentionally left blank, just to better understand where committee would see that split being. Again, there was some preliminary discussions with the economic development officer, but I think this hopefully just helps future staff and future BIA members sort of understand what an agreement looks like, or set some expectations around that recreation amenity.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'll open the floor for any comments or concerns or questions. I think we should probably enter into some sort of an agreement. I know we have some agreements with others that we haven't had agreements with others and made agreements for going forward. So I think this is probably wise to set that policy in place as well. I'm open for any recommendations or conversation on what that split might be, whether it's 50-50, 60-40. Any thoughts from the committee members on this? Go ahead, Brian.
50-50.
Dan, you look like you're about to say something, but
No, I'll agree with that.
Sandy, want to bid me up?
if it was for the Arthur Mount Forest Fall Fair, you might get a bid from them, but go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I'm not unhappy with Brian's bid, as he puts it. I just would say that this may be something, a learning opportunity in this as well, in that it may not sell that well with the BIA to come back to them and say, hey, we're expecting you guys to pick up some of the tab. I could be wrong about that, but it does underline, when we enter into these types of things, it's probably smart to talk about this stuff up front.
I agree, and it kind of echoes what we were talking about earlier with the BMX skateboard, maybe setting the expectations up front. Sorry, did I cut you off there, Andy?
Oh, well, I just was going to say, so given in the light of the fact that we maybe haven't done the upfront work on this, I might be more flexible than just saying, okay, it's a hard 50-50. I'm not looking to penalize the BIA for something they didn't expect. And certainly we should have known that there would be maintenance costs going on, and we should have discussed that. I think as a township, we probably need to take ownership for that.
Would you suggest having a conversation with them before we tell them what we're thinking of doing? Is that kind of the gist of what you're saying, Andy, or?
Well, again, I'm not the
sorry?
expert. I'm not sure what all the discussions have been to date. Maybe there's been some groundwork laid for this. I don't know. I just suggesting caution is all I'm suggesting, and flexibility. I did see Matt have his hand up, so he probably has the answer to my questions all packaged up.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to say the intent was major capital costs. I think operations and maintenance, it's kind of assumed that the township is going to. It's more forward looking at when ultimately this will need to be replaced, kind of what that relation or what that split looks like if there is a split. And it's certainly not something, if it was committee's wishes to defer this, staff would understand if they wanted us to approach the BIA for a conversation first. There's no urgency. There's no urgency in this part of the recommendation.
Thanks, Matt. I don't think it would hurt having a conversation with them before we nail any kind of a split up, or if there's going to be a split. I happen to know a few of the BIA members that we can kind of feel them out to see what their thinking is, but I think maybe possibly deferring this until after that might be suggested. Saw your hand up, Member Yake.
Yeah, I mean, I like this agreement, this type of agreement, and I think that maybe I agree that the discussion with the BIA should happen before we proceed with a number. But I do like the type of agreement, or the type of agreement that we've kind of put together here, and the possibility of using it in the future might be a good idea. But I certainly would let's talk to the BIA before we start slapping some numbers in here. Just I think everybody understands that there's always going to be costs associated with ongoing maintenance and capital with any project. And I think as long as we keep the dialogue and conversation open, then we can come up with an agreement. But I do like it.
Yeah, I think we do need to have an agreement from the onset. And again, this kind of goes with possibly having a policy in place for the Township of Wellington North entering into stuff like this. So the expectations are set for both the township and the rec committee, as well as the service group or the BIA or the chamber or whoever it happens to be. Is that good enough kind of direction? I don't think we need to amend it, or Mike, what's the proper procedure here?
I think you could just have the movers and seconders to move and second deferral of the recommendation.
Okay. Are you gentlemen all right with that?
Yep,
Sure.
fine with me.
Ready? Well, then on recommendation 2, I'm not going to reread that, but then I'll put in further that the committee directs staff that we defer the maintenance costs of the outdoor gym until we've chatted with the BIA and bring it back to the next meeting of rec and parks and leisure. If Karen was here, she'd probably have better words to that, but if everyone gets the gist of that, I will go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I don't mean to step on your toes, Chair McCabe, and if I am, I apologize, but I don't think we really need to formalize that. I think it's a direction to staff that's already been suggested by Matt. I think we can just leave that in his hands to take it away.
Sure, that sounds good to me. All right, all in favor of recommendation 2 with that add-on of the deferral for Matt? Great, thank you very much. On to RPL, excuse me, 2021-018 Ontario Provincial Regulations 364/20. I have Mayor Milne recommending that the Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee receive for information report RPL 2021-018 being report on the Ontario Provincial Regulations 364/20, and I'll have Member Yake as the seconder, and I will pass it over to you, sir.
Yep. Thanks, Chair McCabe. And this is just sort of a summary of the September 22nd changes that occurred in the province related to the provincial regulation just about accessing some of our recreation facilities. And on September 23rd, which was the Thursday immediately following, local public health issued an instruction that provided some further guidance or further rules as it relates to who can access our facilities. So in a nutshell, the Arthur and Area Community Center, the Mount Forest and District Sports Complex, the Damascus Hall and the Arthur Senior Center are all securities being hired for when those facilities have events happening. And with the local public health instruction, really the 3 populations of people that can gain access to our facilities without proof of vaccination and photo identification are people 11 years of age and younger, people 17 and under who are actively participating in organized sport, and people who have a medical exemption. So it's been a very complicated regulation to roll out and enforce. And I know on the line is Tasha, Mandy, and Tom, and they've really been at the front lines as it relates to trying to provide some clarity in a situation that's been very, very confusing just to implement. On top of that, and not really the township's I guess, concern. But the user groups all have potentially different rules as well. So you might be able to gain access. There's coming a time when you might be able to gain access to the facility as far as past security being one of those populations, but then the user groups might have more stringent guidelines that they're enforcing related to accessing or participating with the different organizations. So again, big shout out to Tasha, Mandy, and Tom, and the entire rec team, because it has been since September 22nd, it's been a very challenging customer service environment related to rolling out that regulation and the local public health board instruction.
Thank you for this, Matt, and I would suggest it's been very trying because of these, of all the staff, and especially the three that you mentioned, Tom, Mandy, and Tasha, living in the community as well. It's not easy, it's not fun. No one wants to see security at their arenas or community halls, but this is the air that we're living in, and it's a quandary for sure. Are there any questions or comments for Matt on this? Go ahead, Dan.
Just again, thanks, Matt, to you and your team and everybody involved. But how has it gone? Like, has it been like, especially I guess at the community centers? How has it gone over the last week to 10 days?
Yeah, I'll defer that one to Tom.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Matt. I knew you'd do that. Actually, it's been pretty good. We've had one incident where we had to call the OPP. But other than that incident, for the most part, most people have cooperated. There's been questions people turned away, of course, but just the incident with the OPP, and it was cleared up and the person hasn't been back.
Very good. So overall, Tom, you're happy with the way the security's handled things, and we'll
Yeah,
just continue to.
Yeah, it's nice to have them there instead of one of us or a local person trying to
Sure.
turn people away we know.
Yeah, no, very good, thank you.
Go ahead, Andy. Thank you, Tom. Go ahead, Andy.
I'd just like to pass on some comments that I've received from residents of both Wellington North and Southgate that actually appreciated us engaging a security firm to do the screening at the door. Maybe screening isn't the right word, but they found them to be professional, friendly, easy to get along with, and they understood the job that they were trying to do, and they appreciated the work they were doing and not putting, our frontline staff who are tending the ice and, cleaning the washrooms and doing all the things that our staff do, not being put in the position to have to deal with that. So I've had several comments very favorably in that regard. So again, I thanks to staff for that recommendation and the implementation based on the feedback I'm getting. Of course, I hear about some of the negative incidents, but I hear a lot of positive as well. So.
I was going to say, Andy, I've heard some positive stuff, but then also I've heard some negative stuff, but it probably pales in comparison to the people that are right there at the doors on the ice in all of our facilities, and it's tough, and it's got to be tough, and I'm glad the security is there. And I think what a lot of people, I don't know if they fail to understand or maybe we don't grasp it, is that it's a provincial mandate that the municipalities have to enforce, and there's not really the greatest regulation. Well, there's regulations, but there's no way to really enforce it, and it's kind of up to us as a municipality to enforce it. So with that, Matt, I know we had chatted about this a little while ago, and with the COVID cost recovery, will that pay for some of the security at the municipal buildings that you mentioned here?
Yeah, the security component will be looking to use funding that's been provided from the COVID recovery fund that the townships received.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clear that. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
just on that topic, Chair, I've also had positive feedback around that. I did have a few people ask me, who's picking up the cost of that. And I did share with them that we were planning to use the COVID-19 provincial federal combination funding to help pay for that, and that made them much happier.
Yeah, I think when people find out that, like I was saying, that it's a provincial mandate, and I mean, ultimately it is taxpayers' money, but it's not coming out of the municipal coffers directly. So
There is
Any,
only one taxpayer.
that's right. Any other questions for excuse me, for Matt on this provincial regulation? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Thank you very much. I know that's a tough one. It's a tough pill to swallow. I don't know if we ever thought that we'd have to have security at our facilities. And again, a big shout out to Tom, Tasha, and Mandy, and all of the staff that have to deal with this issue in person every day, and even on the roads, or all the staff for that matter, and staff inside as well. So thank you for that. Moving on to items for considerations, we'll move to the Wellington North Trails, and this is a verbal update from Matt. I have a feeling that we might see an appearance by Mandy, but I'll leave that up to the Director of Operations.
Yep. Thanks, Chair McCabe. The OMAFRA signage, which is basically the points of interest related to some of the agricultural properties that are along our trails, have been installed in both Arthur and Mount Forest. And yeah, there was some work done on the pedestrian bridge in Arthur, and maybe I would defer to Mandy to just talk a little bit about that.
Are you, Mandy?
Thank you, Matt, and to you, Chair McCabe. So I'd just like to take a moment to thank our volunteers in both Arthur and Mount Forest. We have a very dedicated group who comes out and they walk the trails quite frequently. They let us know of issues, opportunities for us to address with the recreation team. So for instance, we had a storm a couple of weeks ago that was quite bad, knocked down a few tree branches or tree limbs. And our volunteers are very quick to get out there and let us know when we need to attend those items. So we'd like to send a big thank you to all of those dedicated volunteers. And then a couple of weekends ago, there was a group of volunteers who worked to complete the bridge project at the River Trail in Arthur. So just like to thank those volunteers. It was a Sunday, beautiful Sunday, fortunately. We came together and were able to complete that River Trail bridge, which means that that trail portion will be able to be open again.
Great, thank you, Mandy. And I've had a chance to see the bridge there on Wells Street, at the end of Wells Street, and it looks fantastic. So thank you to the people that put the hours in for that. Any questions or comments regarding the Wellington North Trails for either Mandy or Matt? Sorry, go ahead, Mandy.
Sorry, I'd just like to specifically give you a shout out as well, Chair McCabe, for coming out and helping with that bridge build. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to. Any other questions or comments on the Wellington North Trails? I know I was up to the Mount Forest Trail just by your work, Dan, and it was right after the big rain, and there was staff on site already looking at some of the rivulets that had washed out the trail on the way down to the bridge, and the water was incredibly high, and yeah, just fantastic response time, and great work done by them as well on that trail. Moving on to the Mount Forest emergency generator. Thank you, Mandy, by the way, for that. And I'll pass that off to you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair McCabe. This one's just an update for committee, as the award for this project went through council at the September 27th meeting. So the project has been awarded to Wagler Electric of Milverton, and township staff are just working with Wagler at this point to enter a contract for the new emergency generator at the Mount Forest and District Sports Complex. So just an update that has happened. And that project, I think it's expected to be, it'll be being worked on this fall. And into the new year, we'll have a generator at that facility.
That's good news to hear, and yeah, much needed as well. Any questions or comments for Matt on the generator update? Seeing none, we'll keep with you, Matthew, and go to the correspondence with the seniors hall and the Damascus Hall, please.
Yeah, this one's, so there's been ongoing conversations with the Arthur Seniors and the Damascus Community Hall. As mentioned, those are two facilities where we're providing security when there are rentals. And those letters are just being reviewed internally by staff. And one of the things that's going to come out for the Arthur Senior Center is we have been waiving rental fees, but the letter is going to recommend that effective November 1st, we'll start charging rent again, as the Arthur Seniors are starting to rent that facility as we approach the holiday season and consistent with public health rules. So didn't have the letters to include as part of the agenda, but just wanted to mention that those letters will be going out later this week. But there has been an ongoing conversation with both those groups.
Thanks for that, Matt. And I mean, it was kind of echoed through this meeting today, just having a ongoing conversation with all our service groups and all the people at the Seniors Hall and Damascus Hall, just to be open and upfront with them. And I think we have been fairly transparent, especially with this throughout the last 18, almost 2 years now. So any questions or comments for Matt on this one? Seeing none, thank you, Matt. I will open the floor to any roundtable discussions. I will start with you, Deputy Mayor Milne.
Just one question in regards to the first resolution that we passed there. Is the chair of this committee considering approaching West Gray for funding for the pool as well?
It's a dang fine question. I haven't, Matt and I haven't talked about that yet. Mike and I haven't chatted about that yet, but that's certainly a great question. I don't think we've gone to them. I don't think we have for the Mount Forest Sportsplex. I could be wrong. I don't know the history on that.
I think you got a big fat zero for the arena. Sorry.
No, that's kind of, I wasn't going to say that out loud, but
I was, and I'll say it again if you didn't hear it. You got a big fat zero out of West Gray.
but perhaps maybe, yeah, we could.
Anyway, just a thought. That's all. Thank
That's
you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Dan or Andy? For follow, go ahead, Andy.
I would just like to compliment Southgate on their foresight in looking after their residents by making a contribution to the sports complex.
Well played, Andy. Well played. Nicely done.
Thank you for that.
Our residents are always at the top of our thoughts.
Thank you for that. Over to you, Dan.
Well, we've certainly always enjoyed Southgate's support, so let's hopefully that can keep on rolling. I understand that the demolition derby went off without a hitch. Maybe Tom could comment on that. I don't know what his thoughts are on that, but I did hear there was a few people around there. It was a nice day. So what are your thoughts on that, Tom?
Yeah, I talked to Kelly today. They had a good crowd. Things went well. They had no issues or anything. The only outstanding item, and that's why I was talking with her, some of the grounds needs a little bit of repair, but it's just too wet to get out there right now to do that. They said they would be back to do that.
Very good. No, well, I'm glad it went off without a hitch. Other than that, that's it, Chair McCabe.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for that update, Tom. Yeah, they certainly had a good day for it. And yeah, the weather hasn't been in our favor to get anything fixed up. So glad that's fairly minimal. I don't have any new business. So we will go to adjournment, and we're actually ahead of schedule by 5 minutes. So I have a recommendation moved by Deputy Mayor Milne and seconded by Member Yake, that the Township of Wellington North Recreation Parks and Leisure Committee meeting of October 5th, 2021 be adjourned at 5:55 PM. I guess I will call the vote. All in favor? Thank you very much. Great discussion as always, and thanks everyone for their participation. And again, thanks Matt and Tom and Tasha and Mandy. It's like I said, it's difficult times and we don't always see the front lines like you guys do. So thank you very much for what you're doing. It doesn't go unnoticed at all. And everyone have a safe and a good week and stay dry.
Betcha. Take
Thanks,
care all.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.